After teaching your lesson, you're going to want to reflect using the instructional lesson reflection. The first thing you're going to do to complete this is actually copy the lesson objective that you created for your plan right into the first box. Be sure when doing this you're including all 4 components, thinking of your CLBC or our formula. Given these supports, the students will complete this skill with this criteria. The next step you'll think about is answering these reflection questions. The first question asks about what you will do or teach next and why for your learners who met the objective of this lesson. So think about the data that you collected and how the students did. The first thing you want to do here is think about the individual students who were able to meet the objective that you set before them. For this, what would be the next step that you want to teach and why are you choosing to do that? Be sure you include that why component. Then if you had learners who did not meet the objective of the lesson, you're going to want to think about what you would teach or reteach for them next and why. This might be certain components of the lesson that you have to review. This might be things you're going to do maybe in a small group for those learners who didn't meet before you move on with the whole group lesson for everyone. Again, include your why you are doing this. Why are you going to do that as your next steps? You should have created an assessment table already where you can have your data outlined from your lesson. This is something you'll want to include in your lesson plan even before you teach the lesson and take data on it, so you know how you're going to take data. One great way to think about this is to include the objective from your plan, the initials of the learners, and then also including the observational data. This table here, as you can see, is summarizing overall with the lesson. Students got 5 out of 5 correct, what their percentage of accuracy was, and you'll notice that we have highlights for the students who did not meet the objective. So once again, you're going to want to highlight the learner's initials who did not meet that objective. This summative table could be based off the data chart that you create. So for example, this student created a data chart where they actually went through each problem, has the student initials, has a key for how the students did if they got it correct or incorrect, and then they always have that qualitative or anecdotal piece of what happened during the lesson, what were the possible error patterns. Remember, you want to make sure that this lesson data is very objective, meaning we would all view this in the same way and there's no bias to the statements that you're making there. One suggestion I would make with this is instead of just writing problem 1, problem 2, problem 3, etc., is actually listing in this box what that problem covered. So what was this problem asking, so that you remember that going forward. Again, looking back at your assessment table that shows the summative information at the end of the lesson, you also want to look in your observational data section where you're looking for error patterns, and you're looking for patterns for the learners who both responded correctly and incorrectly. So here you're going to look and see what they did do correctly and any patterns that came up of errors within the lesson as well. Remember, highlight the students who did not meet that objective. Again, this data chart will just provide more information to go with the lesson objective. The next step that you'll want to think about is the supports that you provided during the lesson and the level of challenge. So looking through your data, did the lesson provide an appropriate level of challenge? Why or why not? And again, you want to cite evidence from their actual responses. So here you might be reflecting on if all students got everything correct. Was it challenging enough? If it was, tell me why. If it wasn't, maybe list how you could have made this more challenging or what supports could have been removed, changed in some way. Speaking of supports, the next section here is where you're going to describe the supports, both that you planned in your lesson and unplanned, so maybe something that you just thought of during the lesson. This could include accommodations, instructional strategies, materials, the assistive technology or instructional technology, and the resources that you did, and how this was provided to your learners and affected their progress towards meeting the objective. Some other examples here could be repeated directions, rephrasing the questions in another way, moving them to another seat, using manipulatives, and so on. So here you'll identify the support and explain the impact. Another suggestion to make would be including learners' initials here if there was an individual impact for some of the learners versus others. So if some students did better with something, you could also list that. If it didn't impact a student, you could list that. If one student needed that and others didn't, be sure to identify that based on the initials. Keep in mind that this reflection for your instructional plans is graded as part of your long plan and included for part of your peer evaluation as well. So you want to make sure that that lesson objective once again is included. It has all 4 components. You want to make sure that you have those statements of what you will or would teach the next time and why your students did or did not meet it, and why you would teach those things as well for the students who did not meet the objective. In the assessment section, you want to think about having all of your data for all students. You want to think about the error patterns and that anecdotal data that you're taking as well. In supporting your learners, you want to think about the lesson challenge and all of the supports that were used in order to complete this. One other suggestion would be to include or embed this information into even your concise plans. So if you're thinking about the data collection that you need for each lesson, you have to include a data collection table prior to the lesson with your data in it afterwards. This same data table that we just looked at above for the long instructional plan reflection could be utilized each day where you're having the summative information from the lesson. You could even use the data chart we looked at afterwards that broke down each question, as well for a daily data chart that you include in your daily concise plan. The other thing I would suggest as a way to just get really good at thinking about your database decision making for tomorrow is embed those questions that are part of the instructional plan reflection into your concise plan. So you're always thinking about what are you going to do for the learners who met and why? What are you going to do for the learners who did not meet and why? Did you provide an appropriate challenge to your learners? Why or why not? And then what supports were beneficial and why they were beneficial. So you can go ahead and copy and paste these questions right from the instructional plan reflection template into your concise plan templates as well, as a way to make sure you're always getting that information and thinking about your next steps.